Broadcasting from New York City to the world, it's the G-Man Interviews.
In the eastern Ukrainian city of Kharkiv, at least 50 people were injured in fighting, according to the Interfax news agency. Clashes broke out between supporters of the movement that brought the Kiev leadership to power and opponents who favor closer ties with Russia. In another eastern town, Zaporizhia, scuffles broke out between rival demonstrators. Interfax said 3,000 pro-European supporters clashed with several hundred pro-Moscow supporters, many of them waving the Russian flag.
Welcome. Joining me to discuss the latest developments on the situation in Ukraine is Matthew Dubas, editor of the New Jersey-based publication, the Ukrainian Weekly. As noted in a previous interview with Mr. Dubas, the newspaper serves as a major source of information for members of the Ukrainian community throughout the United States and Canada. Mr. Dubas has been with the publication for 8 years and has reported on many of the political and social events that have led to the current crisis. He has worked with ambassadors, politicians, policy advisors, activists, and scholars on a range of issues concerning Ukraine. Thank you for joining us again, Mr. Dubas.
Thank you for having me.
There have been a number of significant developments in Ukraine since our last interview. This episode is being taped on April 16th, and a current Huffington Post headline reads as follows: Ukraine on the brink. Separatists hoist Russian flag in east as Ukraine struggles to assess control. Seize City Hall. Armored vehicles stream into town. Putin warns of civil war. NATO strengthens military presence in response to aggression. The Ukrainian Weekly has sources on the ground in Kiev. What's the latest you have on this ever-changing and increasingly tense situation?
Well, we hear that all of this is agitation from the Kremlin. We hear that the people who are involved are not in the majority or represent a significant portion of the population that would constitute even close to even contention of the space regarding its alignment with either Russia or Ukraine. Everything right now is focused on Ukrainian unity, somehow to galvanize the people, and I think that is bigger threat for Putin than civil war even.
Many news agencies in America and abroad are reporting that Ukraine is on the verge of civil war. Given the fact that there have been clashes between pro-Russia supporters, government forces, and those opposed to Russian rule, would you say a civil war is already underway?
A civil war, I guess, has already been underway for a number of years, and now it's overt action by the Kremlin and by Kiev. I would say that the civil war is not, I guess, something that is widespread across Ukraine. I would say that it's more focused in the east, and this is really dividing families. Some are pro-Russian and some are pro-Ukrainian. And it has nothing to do with linguistics, the way that Russia tries to paint the picture as pro-Russians are Russian speakers and everything like that, and there are pro-Ukrainians who are Russian speakers as well, and Putin doesn't want that side of the story to be focused on. It's all pro-Russian speakers who are under threat from Kiev and everything like that.
The body of a Ukrainian journalist named Vasily Sergeyenko was found near Kiev. Do you have any information regarding the circumstances of his death?
I do. He was abducted on the evening of April 4th, and he's a journalist from the Cherkasy region who was investigating a Party of Regions member of parliament named Gennady Bobov. Mr. Bobov has offered a $50,000 reward for, or 50,000 hryvnia reward for any information leading to the murder. This journalist was found with signs of torture, stab wounds to his neck and heart. his kneecaps mangled. It's just a mess. And obviously these people do not respect human life. They don't respect human rights. And here's a clear example.
What is the Svoboda Party, and how has it impacted the situation in Ukraine?
They're nationalist idealists. I would say that they strive for certain elements of Ukrainian society that are divisive, and their right-wing character plays against Moscow's right-wing nature right now, and it's basically a stumbling block to the centrist appeasement and unity that Ukraine is striving for. Svoboda is kind of, they have their stronghold in the western oblast of Ukraine, but that isn't sustainable for them. They need to change their ideology a bit or something to make them more acceptable to people in the east as well. I'm not sure that they're focused on that. They're just focused on their stronghold in the west. And I think that that's the way political spectrum is in Ukraine. It's very regionalized. It's a lot of personality and not ideology.
There are conflicting reports about the number of troops along Ukraine's border. According to your sources on the ground, have they decreased or increased?
Russian troop numbers, according to my sources, are roughly the same. Ukrainian authorities are citing numbers near 100,000. Western media are reporting roughly 40,000, and Russia says they have anywhere from 40,000 to 50,000 troops there. So there are varying numbers, and it's a mystery. Russia is just demonstrating its capacity to disinform its neighbors, adversaries, and even people it wants to cooperate with.
On April 7, NBC News and Reuters reported that a Ukrainian naval officer was allegedly shot and killed by a Russian soldier. Have you been able to obtain any information on the shooting?
Yes, I have. Major Stanislav Karachevsky, he was married with 2 children. He was leaving the base that he was shot at. He was in some sort of dormitory building, and a Russian Marine shot him with 2 shots with an AK-47. And he was preparing to leave Crimea to go back to Ukraine, and this Russian Marine killed him, and he was unarmed.
Is it known what touched off the shooting?
It's unclear. The way the reports are saying, this was a provocation by the Russian soldiers.
In another online article by NBC News, which was published on April 8th, Russia claimed that American mercenaries are operating in eastern Ukraine. Has your source told you anything about this?
Yeah, reports of what are called CIA operatives, or whatever you want to call them, mercenaries. This is a classic Soviet ploy to distract from what it is doing in a foreign country, rather than seeing what another foreign power is trying to do to support the other country that is against them. It's Soviet tactic to distract rather than to acknowledge.
If war does break out, or there is some type of military action taken in Ukraine, and mercenaries do descend on the country, will they be viewed as negative or positive by the Ukrainian people?
That's hard to say. I believe that the country will see any sort of support from another country as a boost, but it depends on the results of these interactions with the opposition forces, especially pro-Moscow forces, to see how, if these mercenaries can even peacefully disarm these armed militants or what. It depends on the results of their role in stabilizing Ukraine.
Possible military involvement by NATO. Is it a case of too little too late?
It's a little bit of that, but it's more of dissuading Putin from going any further. I think that NATO in Ukraine is not necessarily an option, but I think that there's some sort of response either from individual countries that won't necessarily be from NATO, either individual countries like Poland or Romania or something like that is already going on with international exercises. It'll be something to that effect, maybe. We don't even know. It's all a guessing game, and Putin has everybody guessing.
Do you believe the majority of Ukrainians would support NATO's military intervention?
I believe that there would be a significant portion that would support it, but I think that any sort of NATO involvement might be seen as another dividing factor that Putin can leverage against Ukraine.
On April 10th, the Huffington Post published an article entitled "Putin Warns Europe About Ukraine's Gas Debt," which stated the following. Vladimir Putin warned Europe on Thursday that it may face the shutdown of Russian natural gas supplies if it fails to help Ukraine settle its enormous Russian gas bill, a debt that far exceeds a bailout package offered by the International Monetary Fund. The Russian president's letter to 18 mostly European leaders, released Thursday by the Kremlin, aimed to divide the 28-nation European Union and siphon off to Russia the billions that the international community plans to lend to Ukraine. It was all part of Russia's effort to retain control over its struggling neighbor, which is teetering on the verge of financial ruin and facing a pro-Russian separatist mutiny in the east. Putin's message is clear. The EU has tried to lure Ukraine from Russia's orbit and into its fold, so it should now foot Ukraine's gas bill, or face the country's economic collapse and the disruption of its own gas supplies. What options will countries in the region have if President Putin makes good on his threat?
Options will be to either expand the Southern Corridor pipeline project that runs from Kazakhstan across the Caspian Sea through Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Georgia onto Europe. That would be a way to bypass Russian pipelines. All of these gas options are really long-term solutions. In the short term, it'll be a matter of Europe being able to export gas to Ukraine. That's technology that just has to be developed quickly and infrastructure put in place. Germany is hesitant with negotiations because it gets 30% of its gas from Russia, and there's lack of near-term solutions. Other options are for Canada to export oil and gas, and the United States to also expand shale extraction, hydrofracking, liquid natural gas exports. These are all things that are down the road, but Russia knows that there are no near-term solutions, and there's no solution either to Russia's gas pricing either. That's the other thing that has no logic or formula, I would say. It's based on whatever Russia has other agreements with other countries, like volume discounts for Germany, but no volume discounts for Poland. Distance transit fees for other countries, while there's no transit fees for some. Greece has lower price than Serbia, even though Serbia has probably better relations than Greece. It's very opaque and vague, and I think that the international community has to rally to force Gazprom to play by international rules, but Russia has shown that it doesn't.
Yulia Tymoshenko, Vitaly Klitschko, and Viktor Yanukovych have been very outspoken about Ukraine's political future. What role do you suspect they're playing behind the scenes?
Yulia Tymoshenko, as an oligarch and member of parliament and everything like that, people see these individuals as being tainted by the former regimes, by the system of corruption that they were politicians and quote-unquote professionals in. I think that Yulia Tymoshenko has this tainted past and everything like that, and a lot of people are going to shy away from her now. Peter Poroshenko, who is a major presidential candidate in Ukraine, he's the leading individual to really galvanize the country because he can prove his wealth, he can prove how he made his money, and he is against corruption. Klitschko, he is going to be Kyiv city mayor and support Poroshenko's candidacy for president. And Klitschko has also called on Tymoshenko to step down in her presidential candidacy, but she has refused, pursuing her own political career. Yanukovych, he's what we call the fugitive president. He's wanted by Interpol. He has no real political future anywhere, even in Russia. I think Putin wants to finish him off soon.
I'd like you to respond to the following question as a Ukrainian in America, not the editor of the Ukrainian Weekly, okay?
Mm-hmm.
What should the White House do if Russia proceeds with a full-scale invasion of your country?
I think that the U.S. should honor and Great Britain should honor its Budapest Memorandum agreement with Ukraine and should physically, militarily protect the borders of Ukraine. just these sanctions and economic crippling of Russia is a dragged out process that is not getting the results quickly enough. I think that the tipping scales are already there to set the collapse of the Russian economy in motion, but it doesn't guarantee the safety and security of Ukrainians that the U.S. and Great Britain has already signed and said that they would. Russia has already violated this agreement, and I think that the United States and Great Britain should not be associated with people who renege on treaties and agreements.
Again, I thank you for being here and informing us of the latest developments, Mr. Dubas. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, G-Man.
For the record, an invitation to appear on this show was extended to Natalia Shapiro, editor of Russian Bazaar, which is a weekly news publication based in Brooklyn, New York. I invited her in an effort to present a Russian point of view on the situation in Ukraine. Ms. Shapiro has not responded to my request. However, if a member of the Russian government or media would like equal time, feel free to contact me at fromthegman@gmail.com. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, stay cool, stay safe, and stay informed.